click it.
Off in the back room.
All right.
Hey, Ford.
Hey, hey. Hey, Rod.
Hey, how are you tonight?
I'm good.
And healthy, I assume?
So far, so good.
Good, good. Glad to hear it.
Yes. Well, I've been exploiting the opportunity to get in more mountain biking than usual.
Well, that's putting a positive spin on things, as they say.
It is. I'm in better shape I've been in 15 years, so I'm happy about that.
Are you wearing a mask when you ride?
I do, even climbing.
Good for you. Good for you.
I
Gets
do.
that heart pumping.
Yeah. Well, it makes the breathing a little bit more labored.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
Particularly on those climbs.
Yep. How are you doing?
Good, good. Family's healthy. As I was mentioning to everyone else, with the Zoom technology, there seem to be more meetings, frankly.
Yeah.
And they seem to run well into the evening, but that's okay. I'm glad we're all able to get together. Can't wait.
Well, let's see. I think we are. We're ready to go to start the interview.
Yeah, fine.
And you've been interviewed before, so you don't really require any introduction, do you?
No. 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 If you want, I could give the group kind of just a brief summary of kind of the state of affairs of the Parks and Rec Commission.
That'd be great.
And where we stand today. So with respect to the commission itself, we have a full complement of members. It's a terrific group. We have a number of women on the commission today, which we're pleased to see, different age groups. And we also have a young man from Drake High as well. So we have a full complement on the commission, and I can't wait till we can get together in person. But we are going to do the next meeting, this May meeting, we're going to do it on Zoom. So that'll be an interesting experience. Really, with respect to the department itself, we really kind of have pre-COVID and post and current COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So where we stood in January, as I know that you're dealing with budget issues, our budget was in great shape. We actually were running a significant surplus at that time. We had very successful programs, including a number of new programs involving theater and a design element that were highly successful last summer, and that really is a tribute to Danielle and the Parks and Rec staff. So we've had fabulous program, great turnout at soccer last year, which also is one of the big revenue generators. And our age-friendly program is up and running, or at least it was as of January and February. And we obviously are focused still on the health and safety issues in Memorial Park. We had a meeting with respect to that before the shelter in place, and we're moving forward on that front. Now in the COVID era, things have changed dramatically, as you all are well aware. We've had to cancel all of our recreation programs. And of course, obviously on a going forward basis, we're looking at the county health order and the various protocols that we're going to have to satisfy if we're going to initiate programs this summer and fall. And we want to, and so we're looking at those issues very closely because the recreation program, as you all are well aware, is instrumental to the town, both for recreation and a esprit de corps. It brings the town together. So we're determined to put on a program this summer and also into the fall. Obviously, all of this has budget implications because to the extent that we have to either not go forward, continue the cancellations that we've had, has an enormous impact on our budget. So we are going to be working on that carefully. The budget also obviously has an impact on what we do in Memorial Park. So where we stand there is we had a meeting pre-shelter in place with a number of people. Dave was there, Sean was there, Peter Arnold was there, Danielle and others. And the thinking is at the moment to address the areas that are used the most, the fields and the playground. And in preparation for looking at various options, a survey is being a topo survey. That has actually been done, and now the utilities are being added to it. So we have a better idea of the grading that'll be necessary and the kind of the infrastructure issues that will have to be addressed. And all of this is going to be turned in large part on the town's financial position. We'll be looking at county park funds, state park funds. We're taking a close look at those as well as our own resources. But as a practical matter, we have to be realistic and sensible, practical. But obviously we recognize we need to address those health and safety issues that exist, but to do it in a way that can be accomplished. So that's kind of an overview of where we are.
Thank you. That sounds good. Steve, why don't we start off with you?
Sure. Mr. Kerr, was it? Just curious, Rod.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, thank you for your many years of service on the commission. You know, are you still the chair?
I still am, yes.
Great. So, you know, what do you see as the commission's role, both during, you know, the shelter in place order and as we start to, you know, certain restrictions are lifted, and then all the way back to kind of when things open up more broadly? We know that our programs and events have been canceled. You know, what do you see as the commission's role both now and kind of moving forward through this?
Well, one of the roles that I think the commission can play is new ideas. Now that we're in sort of a virtual era, I think it's important to look at different ways of serving our community. The idea, obviously, in the past for Parks and Rec was we would do outdoor activities primarily. We also had some indoor activities. But with the protocols that we're going to see from the county with social distancing and PPE, some of those are going to be very difficult to do. But I think we can be resourceful and do some of these activities outdoors and maybe even some indoors. But of primary importance is going to be the health and safety of the children in the programs and the residents in the community, as well as our staff. So, but I see us taking a leadership role in connection with presenting new ideas to staff and hopefully being helpful for them and responding to their ideas. Bearing in mind, of course, the budget issues. I'm very concerned about the budget issues.
That's all I got for
Brian, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Ford. Hey, Rod, great to see you.
Nice to see you,
So
Brian.
this sort of dovetails along with the last thing you were saying in response to Steve's question. You know, you're going to have your first meeting. Any thoughts to how public space can sort of, you know, be rethought? Because, you know, right now I think there's the community sort of thinking, you know, how can we rethink or reuse that either for social or private gatherings, either on certainly on a short-term or potentially long-term basis. I mean, I know you haven't had time to meet with the committee, but, you know, just something for you to sort of think about and consider, which I'm sure you already have.
Yeah, so we've dealt with this with the Marin Master Gardener program. I'm the president of that also, and we have 300 people. We put on over 100 workshops and seminars each year. We have them currently scheduled all the way through the end of the year. Some are indoors, some are outdoors. So I've spent a lot of time. We've actually been able to do a lot of these through Zoom, and we've been able to do a number of them outdoors, addressing the social distancing and other health and safety related protocols. So it can be done. It requires a lot of thought. It requires a lot of preparation. It requires people to make it happen and to enforce it.
Thank you, Rod.
Sure, my pleasure.
Do we have Alexis here? Because I don't have her on the screen.
Oh, I see.
I think I'm here.
Oh, that's good, Alexis.
I see you.
Alexis, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, hi, Rod. Thank you so
Hi,
much.
Alexis.
Thanks for the update. I really appreciate it. I actually don't have any questions. I appreciate Stephen and Brian's questions. So thank you.
Okay.
How about you, John?
Thanks for no questions for Rod. I just wanted to state how happy I am that he's decided to reapply, and we're very fortunate in the town to have somebody as able as Rod Kerr to be involved in our Parks and Rec Commission. So Rod, thank you.
Thank you, John. It's my
And
pleasure.
I will echo that, and you'll be appointed later this evening based on our agenda. So thank you very much, Rod.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and good evening.
Thanks, Rod.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rod.
Now we'll move to Shalini Swarup. Unmute yourself.
Unmuted.
All right. So I have known Shalini for a long time through MCE. So I'll take the opportunity to introduce her to those of you who have not yet met her. As I'm sure you all agree, she's highly qualified. And do you have any introductory remarks you'd like to make, Shalini, as we start this process? What you've seen with Rod is pretty much what you'll get.
I'd just like to note that I've been spending a lot of time in San Anselmo lately, as have the rest of you, I'm sure. And I've really appreciated the way the town has come together in response to the pandemic. I mean, I'm sure I've seen many of you out while I walk my dog, because I walk my dog incessantly through downtown. And, you know, it's really occurred to me that a town like San Anselmo doesn't just happen organically. It takes a lot of hard work from a lot of people. And so I appreciate all of your efforts here on the town council and in town government. And I would love to be able to help out to the extent that I'm able.
That sounds great. So why don't we start off, John, with you?
Sure. Thanks so much for applying. You really have a great background for this. Could you just comment a little bit on, you know, what you think a small town like San Anselmo can do to really move the needle on climate change issues?
Sure. I think San Anselmo and Marin County in general can be a leader. And, you know, because of our small size, we can try some innovative approaches that other bigger cities can't. And I think, you know, the real clear example of this is Marin Clean Energy started in 2010 in Marin, and now there's, you know, 21 CCAs serving over 10 million customers in California. So I think we can really be that laboratory for innovation. I also think that because we're a smaller town, we have better connections. So it's not, you know, one person has to talk to another person who talks to another person. It's small enough that we can really work together and develop some, I hate to say synergies, but develop some close relationships to move things along. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in a small town.
Great. Well, thank you for applying.
Alexis, how about you?
Hi, it's nice to meet you, meet you.
It's nice to meet you. Yeah.
And thanks so much for coming out. I was just wondering, sort of building on that question, if you can think of any low-hanging fruit or that we might tackle as a town.
Sure. I mean, I've read the town climate action plan very briefly, but it looks like you have already done some really interesting things that were not low hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit I can think of is light bulbs. That really gets you the bang for the buck when you change out to LEDs. It looks like that's something that the town's already done. I think the biggest, and it's not low hanging, but I think obviously, I mean, I read the report that's going to happen later tonight from the Sustainability Commission, and 55% of the emissions are from the transportation sector, and so I think that's where a lot of focus has to be, and that's not low-hanging fruit because it, electrifying vehicles requires, wire upgrades to houses, panel upgrades. I mean, it's not just about buying a car; it's also about where you can charge it. So I think that's somewhere that the town's done really well in having good EV infrastructure downtown. And I think it's a matter of making people comfortable with the fact that they can come here and shop and charge and making that part of San Anselmo's DNA.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you for applying. You obviously are very qualified. I just had one question. In your application, I appreciate how you wrote about how our climate action plan, emphasizes equity and access. And, in the last question you talk about EV and, I think a lot of the focus is on electric vehicles now, but what do you see as the opportunities for San Anselmo beyond, say, electric vehicles that would, apply to all populations?
Sure. I mean, I think it is a little bit of a misnomer to think that EVs can only apply to wealthy populations because there are significant rebate and incentive programs specifically for low-income folks, as well as car sharing programs for folks who live at multifamily residences. So I would say that we need to make sure that we don't exclude low-income folks from the EV revolution. I also think that there are lots of opportunities in multifamily housing that are more bang for the buck, actually, as Alexis was saying. And that involves, water heaters that serve more than one unit or common area measures. So I think there are opportunities, especially in energy efficiency, to work with low-income populations and multifamily housing.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Brian, your turn.
Thank you, Ford. What challenge do you see, towards sustainability in general, sort of arising from COVID-19? What areas might there just be some backsliding due to the pandemic, and how might we address them, or when do you think, they will begin to subside?
I was literally thinking about this when I walked my dog past Comforts earlier today. I think there's going to be a market increase in single-use plastics now. I think people do not want to touch utensils and items that other folks have touched. I think there's a big push to have single-use items, and even in the grocery stores, we're using single-use plastic items. So I definitely think that is an area where we are backsliding in terms of sustainability, but is necessary in terms of public health. So I'm a little bit concerned, though, that that's going to remain in effect for a long time. So that's definitely an area I see where we could improve some.
Before, do I have time for one more question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. You talked about the electrification of transportation, but there is some schools of thought. Obviously, it's unknown how consumer behavior will take place after COVID-19, but there's a thought that, there will be fewer people using mass transit because they will not want to be on public transit, right? So that will then lead to sort of greater congestion. Any thoughts on that and how that relates to electrification?
Sure. I think, well, it might not directly answer your question, but part of that increase in cars on the road is going to be an increase in people working from home. And so I think that, Twitter, I think today said that they aren't expecting people back until 2021. And I mean, obviously that's a big tech company, but I think, given that there is a concentration of tech companies in the Bay Area, I think that we're going to see a lot more working at home, and that may offset some of the single use. I also think that we'll see more strict cleanliness guidelines, which I think we could all agree are going to be a great thing for BART. So, I mean, I think that we'll have to keep watching. I don't think there's an easy answer for this one.
Oh yeah, no, I just appreciate your thoughts on it, and thanks for playing.
So Shalini, thank you very much for stepping up and applying. We'll address your uncontested application later on in tonight's meeting, and I'm really glad that you are participating in San Anselmo's governance. I think you'll be a great addition. So thank you.
Thank you for your consideration. Have a good night.
Okie dokie. So we have about a minute before we start our regular meeting. Okay, it's now 7 o'clock. My name is Ford Green. I'm the mayor of the town of San Anselmo. I want to call to order our twice a month town council meeting for today, May 12th, 2070. And because of the ongoing COVID-19 virus, we are conducting this in the context of sheltering in place and by Zoom. And at the outset, San Anselmo is a town that respects choice, and part of the choice that we respect is the choice to express one's patriotism by not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. That's what I choose to do. And so our Vice Mayor, Brian Colbert, will lead those who do want to recite it right now. It's all yours, Brian. Oh, no, Brian? How about you, John?
Happy to do it. All rise, I guess. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for it.
All right. Thank you very much. So we will now proceed with open time for public expression. And before I recite any of the rules for that, do we have any members of the public that have called in or otherwise connected with us that want to say something in public open time? Okay, it does not sound like there are. So we will close that item and move to council reports and requests for future items. Brian, why don't we start with you?
Let me unmute myself. Thank you, Ford. I'll start up with the EDC, and John, you were also at the meeting, so feel free to add whatever I forget. We had our first meeting today under the leadership of our new chair, Jessica Rising, and she brought a new energy and a whole lot of initiative to the meeting. We heard from some local merchants about the liquidity and cash challenges that they and other businesses are having, and how even if the funds from the CARES Act are arriving, they're not arriving as timely as they would have hoped. There was some discussion about the COVID-19 resources and materials that the EDC has been sharing with the business community and beyond. And also, we heard from the Chamber of Commerce representative, Benedetto, who also weighed in. There was talk about whether or not to do something with San Anselmo Avenue to help our restaurants, because whatever comes out of the state guidelines, they will have less interior space than they have in most of the restaurants in town. They don't have outdoor spaces they can leverage for greater revenue. I also attended a meeting of Marin Transit as one of the directors. They talked about the ridership that they, like most other mass transit systems in the US, are experiencing. It's about 80 to 90% drop, which they feel they can handle for right now. There was a whole lot of emergency actions that Nancy Newland, the general manager, and staff had done, you know, in terms of signage and complying with the COVID-19 mandates. And one of the new initiatives that they're putting into place is a new initiative with Uber to help facilitate first and last mile transit, which is would be an interesting program in any case. But and I'll switch right now to the Transportation Authority of Marin meeting, executive meeting, which I attended yesterday. One of the conversations was, you know, will there be greater congestion in Marin? Because even though some people will be working at home, not everyone will be able to on a consistent basis. And if they do, will they prefer to travel in their own cars rather than being on public transit, no matter what new cleanliness regimes? But, you know, ultimately we'll have to sort of see what consumer behavior looks like. At TAM, we talked about what the budget looks like. And it looks like in the short term, because TAM is primarily a funding agency for projects and leveraging other dollars, the short term being over the next year or so, TAM looks to be in pretty decent shape, in part by potentially relying on its reserves. But, you know, going into the future, given what the economy may or may not look like, TAM may be forced to revisit some of its projects or the money that it devotes to the communities and cities here in Marin. One question I raised at the meeting was the Safe Routes to Schools, which encourages kids to get to school either by biking or walking. You know, what will that look like? Because one of the conversations that's being had right now at the state level and throughout all the districts is, what will the school year look like? I think at this point, the guidance is that it's not going to look like what school has looked like in the past. And so, you know, what will that mean from the ability of the program to execute in terms of having more people at multiple points during the day, and what that will look like from a budgetary standpoint. I would also like to draw people's attention, most people probably saw it, to what happened in Mill Valley last week with the Yellow Bus program. Now, by way of explanation, the Yellow Bus program in Mill Valley is different, I think, at least certainly in my opinion, in that it's always had a difficult time garnering as much parent support as the Yellow School Bus route here. I mean, it's well known that it reduces congestion from here to Whitehall. So the conversation that happened at the Mill Valley Town Council meeting was that the directive that Marin Transit has received is no more than 8 riders on a Marin Transit bus.
Jesus.
And so the question is, what will be the mandate from the state in terms of social distancing to get school children on yellow school buses? Because it becomes, I think it's, you know, I'm not telling anything anyone can already imagine. It becomes financially difficult, to say the least, if there are only 8 kids on a school bus, let alone the, you know, the logistics. So I encourage everyone to keep an eye on that. And certainly as Marin Transit and TAM and the JIPA wrestle with this issue, I will continue to make timely updates. But certainly those congestion issues out to Whitehall would be impacted severely if there's significant social distancing protocols. And then the last one is I am the co-chair of the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members Ad Hoc Economic Recovery Committee. And I feel very pleased and privileged to be co-chair with Kate Collin, Vice Mayor of Santa Fe. Kate has an incredible amount of energy, intelligence, integrity, and has already worked on cross-jurisdictional issues. So she's bringing a wealth of knowledge and connections to this. And all I'll briefly say is this committee, we've gotten representatives from each of our communities in Marin, And what we're really trying to do is be additive to all the various stakeholders in Marin right now that are leading the economic recovery efforts. And so I'll just briefly highlight them. The county's main vehicle is Marin Recovers. That's a website that has a lot of information, and they are managing all the various industry silos to then communicate back to the county health director, Dr. Matt Willis, and how to open up and feedback from the community. Katie Rice, supervisor, and Dennis Rodini, supervisor, are also heading the main effort. Supervisors Conley and Judy Arnold are heading the small business initiative. Kate and I are liaisoning with them with the Marin Economic Forum and also with the Marin Small Business Corporation. We're also fortunate enough to be liaisoning with the Marin Managers Association. And I do have to say that I know our own town manager, Dave Donnery, has been a really active, vocal, and valuable participant in that. And that's really key because they're the group that will really help execute these policies while also maintaining the sense of place that keeps all of our communities. The last piece I'd just like to talk about about this particular group is one of the conversations has been each of the private sector-led fundraising initiatives that have all taken, various forms, and to what extent those initiatives have been successful in leveraging the county fund. And from my viewpoint, it's really hard to discern a pattern. I mean, San Rafael went out first. They got some private dollars. Novato got over $400,000, over half of which came from a video company. Fairfax contributed a lot, but they have a much more sizable reserve. Larkspur just launched theirs. So, but like I said, those have all been private sector initiatives, either led by the chambers or other groups. And so those are my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You've been doing a lot of hard and valuable work. Way to go.
Thanks,
John,
Ford.
how about you?
Thanks, Ford. Just to follow up a bit more deeply on some of the EDC, Economic Development Committee activities, I wanted to mention two specific outcomes of the work of the EDC and the subcommittee that the EDC set up for COVID-19 in particular. And then I have a third thing, which is a request for an action for a agenda item at the next meeting related to that. The two accomplishments that I wanted to report, or I should say planned things, we've talked about, and Dave has indicated his agreement to having the town help businesses with some signage when we actually do get to a staged reopening. Some of this may start as early as next week, and Dave may have more to say about this, but there's a plan to, through some of the volunteers on the EDC, we've got some fantastic signs, very, very inexpensive signs for businesses to sort of celebrate and advertise the partial reopening of the town next week. And I don't know whether Dave wants to add to that when he gets to his report, but we've got Michael Schwab and Rich Burns involved in this. And so I think we're going to have some great signage that's going to coordinate with some of the town's other signage changes that we've all noticed and we've talked about here before. So that's one thing. The second thing, I think we talked before about a business needs assessment survey that the EDC conducted starting in mid-April. That's mostly completed, but it's still ongoing. But we did get some really interesting data out of that survey about the impact of the shutdown order on local business. And so another action step is to share some of that data with the county health officer as he considers, his steps regarding reopening the county. So that's another action. The third thing I wanted to ask, and this is a request for an agenda item at the next meeting. As Brian alluded to, a number of the towns have actually contributed to small business grant programs. And there's many different models to these things. There's really no one formula. But we had a couple of ideas that came up earlier today, actually mainly in the subcommittee meeting of the EDC this afternoon. that I think would merit an agenda item at our next council meeting to talk about whether there might be some circumstances under which the town itself might be willing to help match any sort of private donation program that might be undertaken. So I think there's enough of this out there. I have some views on it myself, but it's a big topic. And I would note that just about most of the towns have actually contributed some town money to these programs. I don't know I don't personally know that that's the right way to do these things. I think there's some other models where we were talking about earlier today in our subcommittee meeting that might involve the Chamber of Commerce. But I'd like to propose that we have a discussion item at the town council level at the next meeting. And Dave, I think Dave will have some ideas to talk about at that point. But I wanted to put that out there forward specifically as something to talk about at the next meeting.
That sounds like a good idea. I would be in support of that. How does everybody else feel?
Yeah, I support that. I know the chamber has had discussions around that, very preliminary discussions. So I'd be in support of that.
I would as well.
Me too.
Okay. So
Okay.
there we go. And is that it for you, your comments, John?
Yes, it is, Ford. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move next to Alexis.
I just have two things to report. One is there was a community development block grant commission meeting last Thursday. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a board with representatives from all over the county. I'm San Anselmo's representative that stewards monies coming in, federal monies coming in for from HUD, and then redistributes them to nonprofits and to projects that will increase affordable housing and community service organizations' ability to function effectively in Marin, excuse me. And so that was last Thursday. We allocated funds to a number of really worthwhile and important causes. And then yesterday I joined the tail end of a meeting with, I'm not sure what the exact title was, but there's a neighborhood response group or neighborhood resiliency groups forming in San Anselmo to basically try and get ahead of the coming fire season and just make sure that we have an effective community level response, making sure that our vulnerable neighbors and loved ones in town are being looked after in the event of outages or evacuations or whatever may come up. And Danielle and Kevin, I know, have been really helping bring this group together, and Danielle was on the call, and just wanted to share that it's a really great group of people and they're really passionate and they're organizing, and I'm excited to see what they ultimately bring forth.
That sounds good. Thank you, Alexis. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, a couple of quick things. Tomorrow night, there will be a meeting of the Ross Valley Fire Board. Mayor Green and I will be attending that. It's a meeting via Zoom. People can certainly call in if they like. We did not meet last month, so this will be our first meeting since March. So I look forward to having an update at the next meeting. Also, the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority will have its first board meeting on May 21st. The Operations Committee, which Dave is on, has been meeting to this point, but this will be the first meeting of the Prevention Authority's board. I look forward to reporting back to you from that meeting. I've been talking with a lot of people from Fire Safe Marin lately. They're really excited about this initiative, and so am I. Finally, I've just, been hearing in my conversations with residents and business owners, one thing that's kind of popping up to the top is there's particular concern about teenagers. I'm hearing it from two ends. One from parents of teenagers who are looking for a little more guidance on, what they should be advising their children to do now that, there have been certain restrictions that have been loosened. And I'm also hearing from people who are around town, elders, business owners, who are concerned that they see, teenagers outside hanging out, some of them not wearing masks or practicing social distancing. So is there anything, a question I'm getting, is there anything we could do as a town in terms of providing more support for the parents in terms of what their kids should and shouldn't be doing, or any type of guidance we could provide with regards to that? So something to think about. I know we're planning this kind of community forum to discuss these things. I think this is certainly be a topic that would be right for that. But yeah, that's basically all I got, and I look forward to a more robust update once some of my committees meet in between now and our next meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Before I get to my comments, are there any comments that upon reflection any members wish that they had made that haven't?
That would be me, Ford. Thank you very much for that comment. We got an email today from a neighbor at 28 Austin who said that he has been residing next to a building that's a house that's been under construction for 4 years. And so I was wondering if we could get an update on that particular house at a council meeting, or at least, is this a one-off issue, or is this a problem? I would like to sort of better understand this issue and be in a position to respond to one of our constituents.
All right. That sounds that would be worthy of a report offline. And if it expands to require broader consideration, I think we can make that decision downstream.
Thank you, Ford.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. So with respect to myself, I don't have any meeting reports. All of MCE's, its board meeting and its subcommittee meetings that I'm a member of have been canceled and not held since our last meeting. I would like to acknowledge what a good job both our citizens and the citizens of Fairfax, so really Ross Valley citizens, have been doing with respect to wearing masks. The more that the shelter-in-place restrictions are lifted, the pathogen doesn't just disappear. And so the alternative measures to inhibit transmission become increasingly important. And while certainly not perfect, so there's lots of people that don't wear masks, in the Ross Valley, the broad majority seems to be. And while I haven't looked today, the last time I looked, which I think was yesterday, the county report on the reported infection cases between San Anselmo and Fairfax remain at 14, where they have been for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I think that's great. Something that I'd like to request from Megan from our next meeting would be a legal opinion that analyzes and discusses whether or not there are any potential Brown Act issues with respect to carrying on our meetings via Zoom. I know that it's been mentioned some, and I would like a more comprehensive exegesis on that from our town lawyer. If I have the agreement of everybody else. Doesn't have to be an agenda item, but I think a report that details whether or not there are any problems, and if there are not problems, what the basis is for our proceeding by Zoom not being in conflict with Brown Act requirements.
Okay, happy to do it.
Okay. Let's see, also, with respect to John's item, I just wanted to add we're coming up around on our yearly budget cycle. So the timing's good. It's not going to be business as usual. So it's really important to proceed with as much information as possible. And then also, lastly, unfortunately, it's come to my attention that recently there was a smash and grab at Caesars Cyclery where 4 very expensive carbon fiber bikes were stolen and the plate glass window smashed in. That's just really a shame. So that's it for me. How about from staff? Unmute yourself. Dave.
I can just mention my things as part of my oral report.
Okay, that sounds good. So then, if there aren't any further concerns, I will close this part and move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any public members that are present that anybody is aware of? 3. Okay.
Yeah, we have public members.
So with respect to the consent agenda, when I get done with these initial comments, that'll be the time for public comment on any items that are set forth in the consent agenda. After that, then any council member can pull a particular item. Those items that aren't pulled for further discussion will be voted on. Then any pulled items will be discussed, and those will be voted on. So starting out now, is there any public comment that anybody wants to make with respect to any consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Does any council member want to pull any particular item? All right, seeing none, how about a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, and then so we have to roll call this. So we'll start with you, John.
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Brian,
Yes.
Alexis,
Aye.
and I'm a yes. So now we will move on to the town manager's oral report. All yours.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor and council members. Tonight we'll hear short reports from myself, from Danielle, and from Sean, followed by Helen, who will be presenting on budget impacts related to the COVID-19 pandemic. A few things related to the health orders. Today, Governor Newsom announced long-awaited guidelines for the reopening of restaurants for sit-down dining. There was nothing unexpected, 6 feet apart, staff wearing face coverings. The one thing that was not disclosed was a specific date for the reopening, but we can expect that potentially in the June 1st new order. Most of you know staff has been involved in a multi-jurisdictional effort to explore the possibilities of allowing for outdoor dining in San Anselmo. John is sitting on a working group that's considering all the logistical, health, and safety challenges around this. Staff has spoken preliminary about setting up a program for this summer that would allow for dining on San Anselmo Avenue between Tunstead Avenue and Tamalpais Avenue on Friday and Saturday evenings. This could mean closing on Friday afternoons and opening back up on Sunday mornings. It could mean closing from 4 to 11 on both Friday and Saturday nights to allow for evening dining, or it could mean closing the street from Friday afternoons and opening back up on Monday mornings. There's a lot of options. The working group is also developing guidelines for operations that meet the health and safety requirements related to the food service. And any of these plans and guidelines that are developed will be reviewed by the public health officer. Staff is also looking into how this would work around the sale of alcohol, and we may be bringing an item related to this to our next meeting. Public health is expected to amend the stay-at-home order for beginning on this May 18th, this coming Monday. This update's expected to have a couple of primary changes. Number one would be the loosening of restrictions related to motor vehicle access to local parks. And the second would be the allowance of non-essential retail businesses to offer curbside pickups of goods. The changes to the parks order would mean that the town could reopen the parking lots that serve Memorial and Storage Park, and we could take down the resident parking only zones that are put up mostly around the trailhead at Storage. CMPA reports that issues related to people driving in from out of town has really subsided, so it's not as much of an issue. It is expected that the parking areas at MMWD Open Space, GGA NRA, state parks, and the Point Reyes National Seashore will remain closed for the time being, as that they continue to be a regional draw, and they continue to have issues every weekend, regardless of whether or not the official parking areas are closed. So they're holding firm on that for now. Regarding the curbside retail program, the EDC has developed a plan, as John mentioned, to distribute signage to any business who will be opening for curbside service and is interested in participating. Subcommittee has an ambitious plan to get posters out to these participating businesses in hopes of having a consistent visual notification that certain businesses are open. You drive down right now, you really wouldn't be able to tell, but I was going to share my screen, but this comes out a little easier. They're just sort of the typical Michael Schwab design. This does not do it justice. They're 11 by 17. They're much bigger. There's different colors, and there's a few different messages. But what we're hoping is if these are put to the side of the door consistently at about 6 foot, 6 foot of height, it'll be easy to find out who's doing business. And you can, and we did a preliminary walk around last Friday, and people really liked the idea of us providing those. We're also looking at getting the safety content that's going to be required of these curbside service programs and doing a similar treatment. So they're not getting something from the county that kind of looks different. We'll actually put the information in this format, so it'll sit right next to it. So this program will be implemented this week. I'm going to now turn it over to Danielle for a quick report on the planning to reopen youth serving programs in the summer. Danielle's heading up part of the working group, part of County Marin Recovers program. Danielle?
Yes, I've been working closely with the county, and I just wanted to give a quick update. We are working towards developing guidelines so that we can offer hopefully some summer programs to our children in the community so that they can have some socialization. We don't think that we'll be able to start before June 6th, which is after 4th of July, which gives us 2 more updates from the county and some time to develop some safe and healthy plans to have our kids in summer programs. So we'll keep you updated how that moves along, but that's where we're at right now.
Thanks, Danielle. And Sean wanted to talk a little bit about the reopening of the construction world and a little bit about the Building Bridge 2 project.
Yes, Building Bridge 2, as you probably all have seen, is going to be actually done in the next few days or beginning of next week. I think there's only like 1 wall left standing right now. So the building will be gone as of next week, and then we'll be working on putting in safety guardrails and a platform and cleaning it up and fine-tuning demolition. It's gone very, very well. And right now, the hope is that by this summer, it'll be ready to use and walk on. Building permits, we opened up last Monday for existing permits, and then last Wednesday, we opened up new exterior permits, and I think as of this Monday, we opened up all building permits. We've been very busy processing permits and dealing with COVID-19. There are very strict requirements for construction in terms of PPE and keeping a log and having a foreman who is making sure that all the order rules are followed. It had been for COVID-19, it still may be. This could be one of our best years for building permits. We actually have a lot of permits that are ready to be approved, and there's still 2 months left, so we'll see how people want to proceed with stuff. But it could be, if things go well, if you're optimistic, we could have one of our best years in processing building permits still. So that's it.
Thanks, Sean. Next, we have up our budget discussion with Helen, and I believe she's going to share her screen at this point to show a PowerPoint.
Are you guys able to see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a way to put it, can you put it on the slideshow function?
Sure.
Okay.
Are you good now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council member. For last about a few months, we've been closely monitoring our revenue activity. Tonight, we are providing with you the financial update with regard to impact to our fiscal year 1920 and then 2021 budget process. So next page. So tonight agenda, we're going to talk about 2019-20 budget assumption with respect to general fund and also other funds. And we're also going to cover the 2020-21, our budget projections, what we're going to do next. So for 2019-20 budget, the general fund revenue part, property tax, for property tax is one of our large revenue source. It's about made up 76% of our revenue, total revenue. Property tax pretty much in line with budget amount due to the nature of the tax levy about property tax. Basically, property tax they levy each year at the beginning of the year, so pretty much your revenue is secure for the remainder of the year. For sales tax, we are not so lucky. As everybody else, we are going to see a downward trend for sales tax. Based on our HDL consultant projection, we're going to see a $300,000 reduction from our prior year revenue. So for business license, we also, as year to date, we only collect 70% of our business license. Business license tax, the reason due to how couple areas. One of them is the town, we do not have the capacity to process the business license payment online. The other thing is the meeting in April, the council grant to defer the payment from the due date, extend the due date for business license tax from April 15th to June 30th. So those couple of reasons create our the revenue shortfall by 30%. We also see a reduction in our parking revenue area. Since the shelter in place, the town closed, pretty much put the parking meters as free for everybody, and also nobody really come out. So therefore, we see a 30% parking revenue reduction. Regarding planning and building fee, as year today, we collect about 69% of our budget amount. Last couple weeks, we talked to Sean and his staff. We looked at the permit in the process. There are about $400,000 permit still in a process. We try to estimate how much we're able to collect compared with the prior year. Basically, Sean's staff there feel like we might able to collect about $200,000 before the year end. We are capable, optimistic, hope the money can come in. For other revenue sources, Measure D also get hit as part of the sales transaction use tax. Is down by $149,000 from prior year. The gas tax and then also SB1 money, we also project a 30% down from for the fourth quarter, which is the quarter, our fiscal year quarter, March to June, will be 30% downward. Measure A, open space park tax, is a sales tax related. We are, based on the county information, we will see 25% for our second allocation for this year. Recreation fund, which is compromised, have two areas. One is recreation fund itself is a program revenue. We are estimated to see a 17%. Since the shelter in place, pretty much we closed down all the facilities, shut down all the programs, depending on what's happened next. So, can potentially see some revenue come in. I think last meeting, the council also approved rent reduction for Isabel Cook art center by a 50% reduction for May, June month. Total grant for 3 months, but this 2 month is impact for 2019-20 budget. With this, all this information we're gathering, we estimate our general fund operating net result for 1920 we will see between $250,000 or $500,000 deficit for this year. Why there's such a big gap? You know, the reason is a consideration for building planning permit. If we're able to collect money, the gap going to be narrow. It's 250,000. But if we're not able to collect that money, the gap will be remain big. Will be around $500,000. The main driver for this revenue shortfall basically is sales tax and planning, building construction related fees. So based on all those data, we project for our 2021 budget year. One of the area, the preliminary impact from outside agency, as you all know, our fire PD service, which contract with JPA with the Central Marin PD Department authority. There are, for our budget this year, they are kept as same as prior year, which is is flat, a 0 increase. For fire department, our fire service, Ross Valley Fire Department, they going to bring the proposed budget for the board review tomorrow, which is we are going to see a 3% increase. The other factor is Bay Area Insurance JPA, which is they are insure our works comp liability and also employment. They are willing to accept based on modified payroll, based on how we're going to budget for our 2021 year and what's our payroll going to look like to reduce the cost accordingly. The reason why they look at the payroll because they are calculation, the formula is based on the payroll number to determine their premiums. So all other JPA, the cost relative flat, such as animal control or climate energy partnership, they are pretty much flat. For general fund revenue, secured property tax, based on the information from county and from our HDL consultant, we still see a 4% increase for next fiscal year. For property tax revenue, normally is a kind of delay reaction from the whole economic. Basically, you will see potentially the following years if any reduction. Because due to the COVID-19 issue, maybe people starting look at the reassessment their property, then that will lead to a property tax reduction. So for next year, we're still good. It's 4%. It's positive news for us. For the sales tax, you know, same as current year, what we see, we project as a flat compare the year-end result 1920 and the 2021, but however, compare prior year, we are also, the reduction is 20 to 30%. Same as a business license, really depend on, you know, are they still in the business? Our business license tax formula is based on their gross income. So if their gross income reduced, then we will see the license fee will reduce. Similar to parking revenue, and also we are project a downturn for the planning construction, building construction fee by 10%. It really based on, you know, people do have money to apply or do they have more construction going on. So we are more conservatively build in 10% reduction. Overall potential budget gap, we'll see about $730,000 for next fiscal year. What kind of area, how can we address those expecting the 2021 revenue shortfall? For our agency, we come up couple areas. Basically, you either do cost reduction, look at your personnel cost, your contract service cost, material supplies, all this operating cost, or the last resort, you might have to using a reserve to bridge this gap. Last couple weeks, our town manager, Dave Downery, have been working hard with all department head, try to identify the area we can potentially reduce the cost to narrow those gaps. So this slide showing library department, they are able to contribute a $78,000 reduction, basically by reducing their training supply budget and then temporary freezing vacant position. Planning department also come up about $225,000, which is by utilizing grant funding for personnel costs. So, for example, Ali is going to using her personal time to, charge to the grant to do some her planning related project. She also proposed potentially postponing general plan project, which is we original plan budget for $175,000. Public work also come up about a $300,000 reduction. The area they covered basically training supply as well, and also reduce the outside contract service. They can utilize the department reorganization to utilize department staff for project management. The recreation department, their budget is, general fund budget is relatively small. The majority budget is in the recreation fund. So in general fund, they're about a $250,000-ish budget total, but they're still trying to help, try to identify area they're able to reduce. Basically, they are proposed to move a quarter of the admin assistant cost from general fund to recreation, which is about $16,000. For our finance and administration department, we also reduce our training and the supply budget as well. However, for us, most time we budget based on what come up next year, what's need next year. So for next year, we might see a little bit increase due to we have the SEIU contract expire. We need a labor negotiation cost to build in this year budget. So with implement all those staff proposed changes, we still see a $250,000 shortfall for our general fund budget for 2021. What are our other options? So can we look at the CIP budget funding adjustment? In the past, town have been consistently contribute $400,000 each year to road maintenance fund to fund paving, road related project. Are we able to adjust that dollar amount? I think the last couple of years, the town did additional funding. In 2018-19, we contributed about $1.1 million to the construction fund and also road maintenance fund to fund different projects. The other option is personnel cost reduction. By there are few way we can handle it, such as a hiring freeze for all vacant positions, furloughs, layoffs. Can we defer COLA adjustment? And maybe no vacancy or leave buyback option, vacation and leave buyback options. So those kind of area we can discuss further, try to narrow the gap for $250,000 gap. With that, I will pass the presentation to Dave. Dave?
Let me interrupt for a second if I can, Dave.
Sure.
I appreciate the work and the analysis and the detail of Finance Director Scott's presentation. I'm concerned that it's coming in under item 6, the town manager oral report.
Right.
There's zero notice
Okay.
about a substantive discussion.
Okay.
And I think that it does not comply with Brown Act notice requirements to have this detailed a presentation. There's just no notice on the agenda. So what I would suggest is that I think this is going to be coming up perhaps at our next meeting.
Correct.
And that we fold in Helen's report into that meeting, linking her presentation tonight, linking the PowerPoint, and then we can have a discussion. I think that I didn't want to interrupt her, and I just don't think it's appropriate with no notice for us to proceed any further on this item. But I would also defer to Megan's advice.
Thank you, Ford. I agree that I think we should stop where we are and then have this exact same information available at the next noticed discussion about the budget. I think this was absolutely well researched and intention was good, but I think we need to cut the discussion short since it was not noticed, as you pointed out.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. We intended this to be sort of an update. We didn't expect to get into the details. We do expect to do that at our next meeting. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was sort of to let you guys know that the initial, we've done a lot of research on finding out what it's going to look like, and we thought we'd share that before having this discussion, but it sounds like I was wrong with that assumption.
Well, I appreciate your intention, and I support it. And as mayor, and I think probably the other council members would agree that it's better to have bad news sooner rather than later.
Right.
Yeah, that was my intention, but we will come back with we'll come back at the next meeting. We might have to do some other activities with you guys too.
Can I just ask a question real quick?
Sure.
One thing that I noticed as you were going through the proposal, it doesn't account for, and I know this is a big variable, but Congress is about to take up another stimulus package in one way or another that if the Democrats have their way, will include relief for cities and local governments. So just, are you guys in tune with that? I know the League of California Cities has just yesterday launched a campaign around that.
Right.
Is there anything by way of update you could give us on that? I think that would be fair.
Yeah, that's sort of brand new information. We didn't feel like we had enough real meat around that to bring it up here, but that may be one of our saving graces for next year. But thanks for it. We'll come back with a similar discussion at our next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. So are there any other reports?
No, that was it.
Okay, then are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, is there any public comment with respect to the oral reports that were just provided? Okay, seeing none, that's good. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 7, appointments to the Parks and Recs Commission and the Sustainability Commission. And as usual, this is Carlos.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you tonight are appointments to the Park and Rec Commission and the Sustainability Commission. The Parks and Recreation Commission has a membership of 7 seats. There's 1 seat available and 1 applicant. Rod Kerr has reapplied for the seat and was interviewed tonight. The Sustainability Commission has a membership of 5 seats. There was 1 seat available and 1 applicant. Shawnee Schwarup has applied for a seat and was interviewed tonight, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Carla. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, any public comment with respect to this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for discussion and or a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint both applicants to their respective boards.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sounded like that was a Brian Alexis.
Yeah, give it to Alexis. That's fine.
Now we'll take the roll call vote. Brian, we'll start with you.
Aye.
And Alexis? I didn't hear you, Alexis.
Aye.
Okay. Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm a yes. So those appointments are made. We're very fortunate to have them. So we will now move on to item number 8, which is a discussion of refinancing one of the 2 series of our town's outstanding general obligation bonds and provide direction to staff. Looks like we're back to Helen.
Good evening, Mayor, Council again. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to introduce Katie Dobson from Jones Hall, our legal bond counsel, and then Bruce Kern from Stifel and the Nicholas Company as our underwriter on this bond issue.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. This item recommended town council to consider refinance the town outstanding general obligation bond. The town staff have started conversation with Stifel, Nicholas and Company, who maintains and upkeeping our town annual bond continued disclosure to comply with the ICEC requirement. We have a long-term relationship. The goal of our conversation is how can we take advantage of current low interest rate market and then to generate savings to the town or our taxpayers, if possible. Based on the most current analysis prepared by Stifel, the total saving to the town taxpayer will be about $150,000 if we're moving forward with this project. So with that, Kate and Bruce all here to answer any questions you might have. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So are there any questions of staff or our other participants?
Yeah, for John Wright.
Yeah, John.
So Helen, just to be clear, the tax savings to the individual homeowner in the staff memo, so it's actually $3.19 per 100,000, right? So is that right?
I think we sent out a revised the notes. It is per single family home about $696,000 would be about 319 cents.
Okay. So the $3.19 per year is in fact the number that applies to the median value.
Yeah.
Okay.
So correct me, Bruce, if you.
Oh, that you got it perfectly correct. Thank you, Helen.
Okay.
So Mr. Wright, the original calculation in the document that you are referencing indicated in a footnote that the value was based on per 100,000 of assessed valuation, but it's actually on the median assessed value of single family home over $600,000 this year in San Anselmo.
Okay, so the 151,214 is the aggregate benefit for the remaining life of the bonds.
That's correct. The bonds mature in 2028, and so the $151,000 of total savings represents the difference in the annual debt service for the 2003 bonds, the bonds that would be refinanced, and the bonds that would be issued with your approval by the town to refinance the original 2003 bonds.
Okay, thank you.
A question I have is what's the cost of doing the actual refinancing? How much does it cost to do that?
The aggregate cost for all the various services associated with selling the bonds is about $90,000.
So then would it be accurate then what we would net to taxpayers would be about 61,000, or who would pay the 90? That would be the town. It would come out of the town's pocket, right?
No, it wouldn't. The costs of issuing the bonds, the roughly $90,000, would be paid for by the proceeds of the bonds themselves. So the bond proceeds would be used first to deposit money in an escrow fund that would repay the outstanding bonds, and second, for all the various services associated with selling the bonds, I think $90,000.
Is the 90,000 subtracted from the 151,000 benefit?
No, the 151,000 is net of those expenses.
Okay, all right. Any other questions of staff? All right, seeing none. Any public comment with respect to this item? No public comment. Bring it back for discussion and direction. John, you want to start?
Sure. No, I thank you to Helen and Bruce's firm for the analysis. I think it's I know interest rates are very low, and a number of citizens have been reminding us that this is a good time to be doing all of this. So I'm very much in support of the proposal.
Okay. Steve, do you have any comment?
No, I think this is pretty cut and dry.
And Alexis?
Nope.
Brian?
No, I would simply echo John's comments of support.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So that ought to be sufficient direction to staff unless you want something more specific. Do you?
I think we want the approval of a resolution that's on your agenda tonight. Perhaps Katie can summarize that.
There is?
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, it's not, okay, got it. So what I actually need is a motion seeking approval of the resolution, which is attachment number 1 to the staff report.
For it, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for refinancing the 2003 bonds.
Okay, sounds good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. We'll start with you, Brian.
Yes.
Alexis?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Steve?
Aye.
And Ford is yes. There, you've got your resolution. Thank you very much for being patient and attending our meeting, Katie and Bruce.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your support tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item number 9, which is pertains to the amending of the master fee schedule for the town of San Anselmo. Dave, are you the lead off on this?
I'm not.
Helen, then.
It's me again. Yeah.
Okay, good. Helen, you're the all-star tonight.
This one's on the agenda.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council member. This item is a public hearing item. After the council to hear my report, we should give the public opportunity to make comments on this item. Back to 2017, the council gave staff the direction to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of the way how our fee have been done. And then the goal is to create a more systematic and then defensible approach to how our fee have been analyzed and then have been applied. The conclusion of creating a new fee system, the council have determined to be a reasonable cost recovery rate for the fee is to adopt a CPI index, which is a consumer price index, to be used to adjust the fee. The proposal before you tonight is to apply the CPI across the board with a few new fees added to this report. The public hearing is going to allow the public to participating to give us, how they feel about the application of CPI. At the same time, allow the council to either to approve a test resolution, amend the fee schedule, or decide to do something else. So before I conclude my report, I also want to point out, based on Elise Simonia, our planning director's suggestion, we're going to add one footnote to our one of the page, which is page 13 of the fee schedule attachment of the building section. She want to add to waive building, plumbing and electric mechanic permit fee for work associated with accessory dwelling units that will deed restrict for low-income housing for at least 55 years. So Elise, do you have anything want to add to it before I conclude my report?
I would just like to propose that we waive fees for accessory dwelling units as an incentive to develop affordable housing. We don't see really too many of these units. I think we've had a couple approved with building permits in the last couple of years. So it's just another incentive that I would be recommending. And because we don't see too many of these, we also probably aren't going to lose a lot of money if you do waive the fees, because most people won't want to restrict their units for 55 years for low-income housing. But if someone did want to do that, I think it would be great, and we could report that in our housing element as something we're trying to do to try to encourage affordable housing.
So Elise, that's the quid pro quo, is that in exchange for a 55-year deed restriction restricting the ADU to low-income housing, there would be a waiver of the permit fees?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Is that the end of your report, Helen?
Yeah, that's the end of my report. So if the council approve this item tonight, so we're gonna add this language in the final report, the fee schedule. So yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Steve, did you have something you wanted to ask?
I had a question, yeah. So back to Elise, if we were to make a motion, say tonight, to approve the fee schedule update, would we need to add to that motion the waived fee for accessory dwelling units?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
It's not included in the fee schedule that you're looking at.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions?
Ford, I did have a question. Helen, you mentioned some new fees in the schedule.
Right. So on the page 18, line 57, lot line adjustment planning director cost. That's from Elise proposed.
Okay, so hold on, Helen. I'm having trouble here. I'm looking at page 18 of 25, and I don't see a line 57. It goes to 22 through 37.
Okay, let me look at it.
In that count, Ford, it's actually on page 20.
20.
So it's the 18 is the center number, but it's page 20 of 20.
Oh, 18 is the center. Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah,
I got it.
So 57 is new.
Yeah, if you look at the towards the right
I see
right
it.
side.
I
say
see.
new.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, so there's lot line adjustment, which I guess we didn't charge for before, right?
Or we had a fee that was much higher. I don't think either we didn't have a fee or we had a fee that was much higher. So we didn't have one for one that was a planning director review. And then with administrative design review, we changed our ordinance to allow administrative approvals. And there's some things that just really don't take any time that we do look at that we don't want to charge.
Okay. So is it just those two? Are those the only two new ones?
And also page 22 in the police department section, line 44. Also, at least bring to my attention. I think during the year we approved this charges now.
I see. Okay. Parking and restricted EV charging spaces. Okay, I see. So just those three.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, I've got a question, and that is with respect to page 13 in the middle, which is the time cost for staff time. Are those numbers straight across, and that are what the actual hourly rate of the particular staff person, what he or she is paid? There's no bump up, or is there a bump up?
This is a fully burden hourly rate based on built-in the overhead. Everything is based on our consultant help us. For this year, this fee, we just increased by 2.5% based on CPI adjustment.
And that's based on what we approved a couple years ago.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have just a couple of proposed amendments. Shall I ask them in question form?
Let's get to that in a minute. Let's just see whether there are any questions, and then I'll deal with public comment, and then we'll come back to that.
Great, thanks, Ford.
Okay. So no other questions. Any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, go ahead, Alexis.
So the town has a really great tradition of waiving fees for permits and activities that are consistent with our cap. And I might have spotted one or two items where we could maybe extend that, sort of like what Elise was proposing for ADUs. One has to do with, actually two have to do with plumbing. They're just in different sections. The center number is 10, a plumbing permit. I'm wondering how people feel about maybe waiving fees for permitted gray water projects. I don't think that I don't know if there's a lot that come through town, but gray water is basically a way of redirecting water that's relatively clean to landscaping purposes. And for most gray water projects, you do need a permit. So if there might be a fee waiver associated with gray water projects. And then that would also include a plumbing plan check on page 11, number 23. And then potentially, I know that our CAP outlines cool roof initiatives and different roofing materials that can really impact home heating and cooling efficiency. So potentially waiving re-roofing permits for cool roofs.
So is Sean still with us?
I am here.
What's your feedback about this, Sean?
The plumbing one, the gray water, we actually, there is a little bit of gray water that we do in relation to, can't remember exactly. It has to do with the water department and taking your washing machine water to your yard. Yeah. That is included with most projects.
Right.
I guess, are you stating that if they were just doing a gray water project?
So what you're describing with the washer, that's a laundry to landscape conversion, and that's the only type of gray water conversion that you actually don't need a permit for in California. But for anything else, we're going to be in cutting pipes, like say to reroute your shower water, there would be, you have to submit a plan, submit a permit. And so for anything where somebody were wanting to do that, which I think you can do under California Plumbing Code.
In theory, you wouldn't, like if it's just plumbing, you wouldn't have to submit a plan. You have to get it. But I think I'm fine with that. I think it's a good idea to incentivize people to do that. That's something that we've been talking about. And then the other one,
which is the cool roof one.
The cool roof one. Yeah, the cool roof one. I would have loved it. I did a energy saving roof.
Hey, so did I. I was wondering if it could be retroactive to 2011.
Exactly. It's not very much money. I mean, if you do look at the fee, it is low, but yeah, we could waive it for energy efficient roofs. It is very low though. If you look at some of the fees, I think it's $150 or something.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? I guess this is Elise calling or talking. The water district requires the gray water system, and our building code requires certain cool roofing material. I don't have any objection to it. I just think it might be we should word it in such a way that it's something that's going beyond what's already required of everyone, like especially for the cool roofs, because everyone has to have a certain reflectivity in the roofing product now. So we wouldn't want to waive the roofing permit for everyone.
Good point. Thanks.
Any other feedback regarding Alexis's suggestion? Any council member feedback? Support, non-support?
I support.
Good. I
would support it.
Somebody's got some background noise that keeps coming in. It's really interfering. And so whoever's got it, if you could mute yourself in the interim. So I'm in support of that also. How about you, Brian and Steve?
Yeah, I'll support it. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I said I was supportive of it.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. All right then. So, Steve, you were the one that was going to do the more articulated motion. You want to incorporate this stuff?
I'm writing it down, yes.
It's very helpful.
I may be a little broad with the plumbing stuff, but I think I got it.
All right. Why don't you make the motion then?
Well, can I first
clarify?
I may need to do that in a minute, but I just want to first commend the staff on doing the fee schedule update. one of the departments that I've served recently went through this at the in the middle of the fiscal year. It went into effect in January, and I know how much work goes into that, not just from Helen in the finance department, but everybody having to go through their fees and look into this. And it's a very tedious thing, and I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that when, if and when we approve this, that there's ample notification to the public for when this goes into effect, and for any programs or permit applications that we're calling out that there are new fees. I want people to be aware, because a lot of times, you'll pass a fee schedule update and then people say, I didn't hear about that and we didn't have the opportunity to do this. So I just want to make it loud and clear to everybody that we're doing it. So if we could utilize the website and utilize Dave's newsletter, as well as our social media platforms, and really get the word out about this. And with that, if there's no other comments, then I'm ready to make the motion.
It doesn't look like there are any other comments, so go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to approve the fee schedule update with the following amendments: waiving fees for accessory dwelling units, as well as waiving the plumbing permit fee and the plumbing plan check. Is that correct, Alexis? Did we lose Alexis?
Oh, yes.
No, she indicates yes.
And yes, then that's the motion.
Well, so hold on, but a critical part also, it should be added, is that those benefits that you just articulated are conditioned on the property owner agreeing to a deed restriction to affordable housing for the ADU for 55 years.
What Ford said.
And in addition, my understanding of the plumbing related ones was that they were related to gray water systems only, not to just waive the fees across the board. So
correct.
Yes, plumbing permit and plumbing plan check fees for gray water systems waived.
So then, Megan, would, if assuming that we approve this, would the pertinent resolution be modified accordingly?
the resolution just references the master fee schedule. So assuming we drop those two footnotes related to the plumbing, which I would like to also just amend slightly more, and that we could do it as specified by a lease, so that we make sure that it's in conformance with the, was it MMWD and other, just the criteria that are, would apply to those plumbing permits as well. At least, okay. I don't want to take words out of her mouth, but we would do those footnotes into the fee schedule. So we would just specify that as part of this adoption of the resolution, that it would be the modified master fee schedule as modified pursuant to the comments tonight's in the motion. Pursuant
to our discussion and the substance of the motion.
Exactly.
Okay. I think is that clear enough for everybody? Clear enough for somebody to make a second?
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded per our discussion. So we'll start with Alexis.
Aye.
And John.
Aye.
And Brian.
Yes.
And Steve.
Aye.
And I'm a yes. So that is adopted unanimously. And we will now move to item number 10, which pertains to a report from Danielle regarding options for our 2021 work plan with respect to the allotment of Measure A funds and provide direction to staff. You're up, Danielle.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. On November 6, 2012, Marin County voters approved the Marin Parks Open Space and Farmland Preservation Transactions and Use Tax Ordinance, known as Measure A. Since 2013, the town has used Measure A funds towards the purchase of Sky Ranch, the Memorial Park Master Plan, the Red Hill Trail, and Memorial Ridge Trail. In 2015, the town council approved a recommendation to split Measure A funds each year between open space for 30% and Memorial Park Fund with 70%. Staff has spoken with the Open Space Committee and they support this continuing the split. The fiscal year 2020-21 estimate for Measure A fund is $77,986. We recommend that the town council allocate 70% towards the Memorial Park Improvement Project and 30% towards the San Anselmo Open Space Fund.
All right, thank you. Any questions of staff?
Ford, I did have a question. Helen or Danielle, how much is in the Memorial Park renovation fund at this point?
We currently have, in the Memorial Park portion, 300, with the current estimates in your report, it would be $382,000 approximately.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is Jonathan Braun or anybody from Open Space there to speak publicly on this? Or any other members of the public? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back here for any further discussion and a motion.
Do we need a motion on this, Ford?
No, I don't actually know. Thank you, Steve. We don't. So let me put it this way. Does everybody agree with the recommendation of the staff report to keep the 30-70 split, with 30 going to open space and 70 going to Parks and Rec of the Measure A funds?
I do.
I do too.
Yes.
I do 3.
And Alexa?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that should be sufficient direction to staff. And we will now move to item 11, which is the annual report by the Sustainability Commission on our climate action plan, greenhouse gas emissions estimates, and town's progress in meeting our local greenhouse gas reduction goals. Elise, this I think is yours.
Thanks. I did provide you with the staff report, but I'm going to turn the presentation over to Forrest Pound, who is the new chair of the Sustainability Commission. And Forrest, let me know if you need me to pull it up or if you've got it there, and then you need to unmute yourself.
Cool, sounds good. I hope you guys can all hear me. Thank you for having me. Yes, I am the newly selected chair of the Sustainability Commission. This is not exactly the circumstances that I thought we would be giving this presentation when we started preparing for it earlier this year, but this is the circumstances that we're all in. So sharing my screen now. You should be seeing my keynote presentation, is that correct?
Yes, it's up there.
Okay, excellent. So to start with this evening, quick update on the most recent emission estimates from 2018, and just keeping in mind that the report that is included in the agenda goes into much more detail than the couple slides that I have, so please peruse that. There's also an update on COVID-19's impact on climate, both globally and locally, as well as the 2020 and 2021 climate action priorities for the Sustainability Commission. There we go. So this is a graph of the total San Anselmo emissions, as well as the 2020, 2030, and 2050 goals, of course, CO2 equivalent emissions. And the latest year that we have and is included in the report is 2018. And as of, as you probably know, between 2012 and 2013, we surpassed our 2020 goal. So now in 2020, we feel good about that. I will highlight, however, that most of that decline has been a result of renewable electricity standards in the statewide with PG&E customers, as well as with MCE. So it's really a lot of low-hanging fruit in the electricity sector that has resulted in that decline of emissions. So there is, though it looks like a wonderful trend, there is still quite a long way to go to get to the 2030 goal. So this is a breakdown of the sanitation emissions by source, and as of 2018. And as you can see, the transportation sector is a huge 55% component of the measured emissions that we have in our town. Natural gas burning, which would include heating, home heating, cooking, and water heating, natural gas water heating, accounts for about a third, and electricity accounts for 6%. So any reductions in electricity, either through efficiency or through further, adoption of MCE Deep Green, while they definitely do have emissions impact, we are starting to whittle down on an already pretty small part of the pie. I want to highlight waste just briefly, because it has actually, everything has kind of been going down. Every sector has been going down, but waste is the one sector that has actually ticked up. And I think it bottomed out. I don't have the exact figure, but I think it bottomed out in 2014 or maybe 2016 and has kind of crept up since then. And waste predominantly is waste from landfill. So that is something that we should be aware of. And I do want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 in relation to climate change, because there are direct effects, of course, and then also there are lessons learned and other takeaways. This is a funny little picture that we got here. So the effects on COVID-19 on climate, the global shutdown may have resulted in a very small percentage decrease in CO2 emissions worldwide. We've seen the sort of very positive stories about dolphins returning to Venice. That is actually fake news, but there might have been a 1 or 2% decrease in CO2 emissions worldwide this year because of the global shutdown. But that and the decrease in other air pollutants and smog as well, both will quickly rebound and are not assured of any sort of trend or whatnot. Locally, we can expect electricity use and emissions to increase because of increased work from home, et cetera. Vehicle miles driven certainly decreased during the shelter in place, but will increase after that. And as was mentioned earlier in Brian's report, there's some concern that reduced public transportation ridership will increase emissions from personal vehicles. Anecdotally, I've also noticed that, and I'm pretty sure everybody has noticed, that outdoor neighborhood and on-street recreation has increased during the shelter in place. Lots of people and kids biking and walking around. So safe and pedestrian-friendly streets is as important as ever. I think the main question for me on COVID-19 and climate is what has been learned about collective action. The Marin and the Bay Area certainly were national leaders in establishing the shelter in place early on. And San Anselmo has been, and town staff have really shown an incredible commitment to keeping everyone safe. So thank you all for that, very, very much. So what does that mean about collective action and whatnot? I think that it means that when it comes to climate action, we know that local jurisdictions are drivers of change, just as they were drivers of change during the initial shutdown phase. I want to highlight the key actions that San Anselmo has taken in the recent past, the adoption of MCE Deep Green has brought all of our town facilities electrical use to 100% renewable. The EV strategy adoption, the single-use foodware ordinance adoption, and most recently the climate and ecological emergency declaration have all been really important steps that San Anselmo has taken. So it's a great start. What's next for the Sustainability Commission? In the near term, we'll need to secure progress and also pursue low and no cost solutions for affordable progress. In the midterm, preparing to be ready to take advantage of possible economic stimulus funds, and in the long-term sort of strategic thinking of things, how can we make investments to achieve the town's sustainability goals? So 2020, 2021 priorities for the Sustainability Commission. We're focused on carbon-free resiliency. We want to explore a solar and storage system, solar plus storage system for Town Hall, possibly modeled as an energy as service with no upfront cost account to the town. We're very aware that, and you know, even more so after the preview of the budget forecast for this and the coming fiscal year, that no upfront to cost account is super important. The idea of the solar and storage for Town Hall would be to replace the diesel generator during fire-related power outages, which would also be a diesel fuel savings. It would be the foundation of local resiliency and future microgrids, and it would enable San Anselmo to become a solar and storage leader in Marin. Also focused on safe and carbon-free transportation, safe routes to everywhere, safe routes to school, safe routes to everywhere. And I just want us to try to explore ways to encourage safe and carbon-free transportation, including walking and cycling, in the duration of the current shelter in place and in the future. I had personally a very scary close call with a vehicle, and my daughter, you know, a public space, as we've come to think of it, is our street outside, and it got scary, and then thankfully nothing happened. But I think that we should be aware of the increased use of our streets by both pedestrians and cyclists. So thinking about maybe temporary signage and speed reduction, or just general awareness and messaging to both drivers and pedestrians and cyclists and kids. Continuing, and this is sort of a midterm or a bit longer term goals here, is to develop a phase EV infrastructure development plan. Earlier in the year, when we were considering possibly installing more public EV chargers, one of the things that we came across is that we need to decide where the most strategic place to install public chargers might be. And an additional aspect of this is that, you know, there might be, certainly not a guarantee in the world that we're living in, but there might be stimulus dollars that will be seeking out, you know, sort of quote unquote shovel-ready projects that we can use to fulfill the goals of our EV strategy. Similarly, and so I'm thinking of a development plan that sort of really is strategic in where we might invest our future EV infrastructure. Similarly, I would like to also develop a microgrid and resiliency investment plan, or plan for the town that will help to kind of shape our thinking as we look at, you know, in the previous slide, the solar plus storage or other opportunities to move town facilities into a sort of microgrid kind of place. And again, to take advantage of opportunities either from federal stimulus dollars or from external or non-profit funding sources that have supported other cities or towns. And I think a big key of a lot of these, goals of trying to attract outside funding is coordination with other local Central Marin towns and jurisdiction. We've spoken with the Fairfax Climate Action Committee on a number of occasions as a commission. A number of their members have attended our meetings and coordinating with them, and in an ideal setting, it would be a single person to maybe a climate resiliency officer to be able to as a shared resource between San Anselmo and Fairfax and San Rafael and Ross or other towns, so that we're able to pool resources and pursue external funds. We understand that multi sort of jurisdictional efforts are more attractive to funders, and ideally we'll be able to pursue larger and more impactful projects through collaboration. That is my that sums it up. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and take any questions or comments or direction that you all might have. Thank you. Oh, you're muted, Ford. Ford, you're muted.
You're right. Thank you for that report. It was a good report. Thanks for telling me I was muted. Any questions of Forrest by any council members? Go ahead, John.
This is a question, I guess, maybe to both Forrest and Elise. And to the last point on the slide about coordination and external funding, what do you guys, what's done now for looking for grant applications? Because a lot of this preliminary infrastructure work and some of the things you've been talking about for town hall and all of that, given our own budget problem, are the sorts of things that really sort of cry out for grants. I mean, do you have a kind of a grant plan, or what you're thinking about how we would go about getting grants?
There was discussion before the COVID-19 crisis about jurisdictions contributing some funding to hire a person, whether it's an employee of one agency that we share, or those kind of details were never worked out. But the hope was to hire someone to help seek grants, and like communities that are larger like Novato have a sustainability coordinator that works full time, which really helps them to pursue those types of projects. Now that we are all experiencing budget shortfalls, Fairfax, we've heard, doesn't want to contribute to that type of position, and nor could I recommend it at this time. So it's going to be tough, but we're thinking that maybe there's staff available in the Public Works Department that could pursue grant funding for these projects, or in the planning department. So basically taking it in-house. And then in terms of sharing it, that's always a challenge, but I think you're considering even the Ross San Anselmo Bolinas Avenue project. I mean, there's always possibilities of working together with other jurisdictions on any of these kinds of projects. It's just going to be tough right now because of we're not going to be able to fund a new person to do that type of work.
And if I can just add there, I think there is an opportunity within the sort of volunteer space that exists with the Sustainability Commission and other concerned citizens who have expressed a desire in helping us in this way. And I think that, a part of the coordination between part of yeah, the coordination between San Anselmo and Fairfax will happen at least at first between the Sustainability Commission, our Sustainability Commission, and their Climate Action Committee. And you know, first and foremost is identifying those grants, and if there's we've worked with Public Works to identify some funding opportunities and whatnot. I don't know if we'll be pursuing any of those in the near term. But yeah, finding the funding is a very important part. So,
and there's also opportunity to use our partners with Marin Clean Energy, who seem to be willing to try fund these types of projects, and also with Marin Climate Energy Partnership. That's the organization where we each have, every community in Marin has a representative on the committee. Marin Clean Energy is there as well, and those they still have a staff member that's helping coordinate projects. So there's always, we're always working together on other things.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right. Seeing none, any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none there. Is there any particular direction
actually, Ford, could I make a comment? I didn't know if it was comments. I have some comments. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hey,
yeah,
Ford, congratulations on your ascension. I'm sure
Thank you.
The Sustainability Commission's in great hands. I just had a couple comments. One, and obviously the economic landscape has greatly changed, but there were a whole lot of private sector dollars sort of pre-COVID-19 from any number of players in this space. The challenge was always, as you alluded to, sort of cross-jurisdictional opportunities. So, you know, obviously I have no idea what those dollars are, but I would sort of say that might be an interesting play other than not necessarily grants. You know, when I hear the word grants, I typically think of, you know, nonprofits. And I will say that most nonprofits right now are really struggling financially. In large part because one, people are less wealthy and feeling uncertain, and two, you know, the social distancing is really impacting their ability to have galas and events. So again, while that might have been a fortuitous avenue, I'm not so sure it will be now. I certainly appreciate, without a doubt, the big ideas and the big thinking. I was wondering if you had any thought on how the commission was sort of adopting to or thinking about any number of the recent additions that have been passed, sort of like, you know, single-use plastics, you know, evaluating or any kind of milestones for, you know, how to carry those forward, or what might be those rollbacks over time? Or are you just sort of waiting for the evolution of the shelter in place? Do you have any thoughts on kind of, you know, those policies and execution, or where they lie right now?
Are you asking specifically like the effect of shelter in place / you know, the new world on the single-use plastic ordinance?
Yeah,
or,
yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my understanding is that you know, as was alluded earlier, perhaps in the well, maybe like you, maybe but in the interview of the new sustainability commissioner, you know, people will definitely be reluctant to use single-use plastics is exploding. Use is exploding, and to sum up, I think that figuring that out as a commission is a great idea. Elise, did you have any?
No, I do. I have something to add because we do have it on the draft agenda. The Sustainability Commission will be meeting by Zoom on Monday, May 18th. And it is one of the items on the draft agenda right now to try to talk about both the plastic ordinance. We will get zero waste funds to try to keep moving that forward, and there's a lot of options that people can use that are not plastic. Now is almost the time to get the word out to those businesses. And then also the plastic bag ordinance is, we've backstepped on that as well. So it's definitely on the agenda for the next Sustainability Commission meeting, or so definitely it's on the draft agenda that Forrest hasn't
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And then, first, here's again, here's one opportunity that the commission might want to sort of think about. I think one of the things that COVID-19 is really doing is, and this is no great insight, is accelerating the changes about business, right? So I know as economic recovery, various stakeholders are thinking about it. They're wondering how sustainable practices might be embedded as businesses adapt to coronavirus, not in the short term, but in the long term. So that's something that you and the other thoughtful members of the commission might want to think about. And again,
yeah, that is also on the agenda for the next meeting.
Oh, come on, Elise. Come on. In any case, Forrest, thanks so much for the really great report and congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so thank you for a good report. We've received and accepted it, and I think your ideas how to proceed are appropriate. So unless anybody else has anything further to say about this agenda item, we'll move on. All right.
Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you, Forrest.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Next up is the, hold on. Yeah, is the approval of the plans for the Bolinas Avenue rehabilitation project. This is Scott's.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight's item is regarding the rehabilitation of Bolinas Avenue. And this project is a long time coming. It's shared by both the towns of Ross and San Anselmo. And we've been working closely with them over many years on safe routes to school projects, traffic calming projects, and then most recently last year with the storm drain improvements. And so this project would be complete rehabilitation using the full depth reclamation process similar to San Francisco Boulevard last year. And the project also has a lot of traffic calming features in it. We've been working closely with the Bolinas Avenue Neighborhood Committee over the years. And so we have several different types of traffic calming in there, both keeping the existing median islands that were put in there in 2013, as well as some speed humps, some shoulder islands, sharrows, and then also installing fog lines so that when there's no parked cars on the road doesn't seem so wide open and encourage speeding that way. We also included in the project to bid a short section of Oak Avenue, which is the upper part of the road. After you start driving up the hill past Waverly, you still have another block of Bolinas Avenue, even though it feels a lot different than the lower portion. And then above Upper Avenue in Ross, then it becomes Oak Avenue. So we included that in there just because it's adjacent to it. And we hope to get some good bids. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you for that. Any questions of staff? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so Scott, I noticed there's some work going on right now on Bolinas, although is that, it looked like it was more digging in for, I don't know, pipes or something. What's going on there right now?
So that's Ross Valley Sewer District.
Ah, okay.
Finishing up the last of their lateral work prior.
Okay. So all of that, so that'll all be done before any of this happens, presumably.
Yes, there's been a lot of work last year with the different utilities preparing for the storm drain installation. So MMWD was out there doing their water pipes, and PG&E was out there lowering their gas lines.
Okay. One more question. So this is a pretty good sized project, which we've talked about obviously before. What's the bidding climate like right now, in your opinion?
Well, I've been talking to some contractors. They seem like they have capacity. I've been seeing a lot of other agencies going out to bid in the last month or so with different types of projects. This project does have some specialized work in it with the full depth reclamation. So any general contractor that gets it usually subcontracts to a specialized outfit. They bring in large pieces of equipment that'll grind up the subbase and mix in some cement and recompact it. And so that portion of it usually is subbed out, and it will depend how many projects around the state are happening this summer with that process. But I think there's a lot of capacity out there with the contractors I've spoken with.
So are you pretty confident? Are you pretty confident that's going to come in close to the estimate?
That's another question.
John, I'll just add that I think it was Larkspur who went out to bid recently, and they got a lot of bids in, which is a good sign. I mean, like our history has been we get 2, 3, maybe 4, but I think they got 6, which is a good sign.
Oh, okay.
I think there is some hunger.
You didn't get an answer whether it was going to come in according to the estimate.
We've been
John.
pretty good. We've been pretty good with our engineers' estimates to date, and Siegfried and Bo Scott looked at this thoroughly, so I think it's a good estimate. We'll see what happens. I think one of the line items is an alt bid, right, Scott?
No, we included the Oak Avenue as in the bid, but it's less than 25% of the work. So if we decide not to do that, we can cut that out.
Any other questions of staff? All right. Any public comment with respect to this item?
Yeah, we have Richard with his hand up, so I'm going to allow him to unmute himself. Richard, you're good to unmute yourself.
Richard? This is the Public Works Director in Ross who's trying to speak, I think.
Yeah, his icon looks unmuted, but I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Nothing here either. Presumably, he's in support of this item.
I will leave him the ability to talk while he figures it out.
No, I got it. I think my microphone was turned off. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Rich Simonich, Public Works Director, Town of Ross. I want to thank Mayor Green and council members, Town of San Anselmo, and the Sean and Scott and the engineering staff there. This looks like a great project. The Town of Ross is in support of the design. We think it's going to be an excellent addition to our common boundary there along Bolinas Avenue. And we're looking forward to a successful project on it and hoping to see some good bids. And we appreciate all the work done by the Town of San Anselmo. I just wanted to show our support as your strange but helpful neighbors here to the south. So,
thank you for your contribution.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks again.
Okay. Any other public comment? Did I hear a flicker? All right. I guess not. So seeing no other public comment, I'll bring it back for discussion and decision. Anybody want to take a shot?
Yep. I'll just say real quick, thank you to Sean and Scott. I know it takes a lot of collaboration on this project, both with the Town of Ross and the Bolinas Ave Neighborhood Committee. So thank you guys. I'm ready to approve this.
That sounds good. I just would add, I'll be happy when this is done to no longer have to field comments from people up on Oak about suffering through third world conditions of the roadway.
Me too.
Steve, why don't you go ahead and make the motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the Bolinas Avenue Rehabilitation Project and authorize staff to advertise construction bids and authorize the town manager to award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
Looks like a good motion to me. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Steve, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Alexis,
Aye.
and Ford is aye. So that passes. Sean, good job. This has been in the offing for a long time. What a relief to vote on it. And I know that you'll be more relieved than anybody after going through the grief of finishing it.
Thank you. It's been a
All
long
right.
time in the making.
It has been. So now we will move on to item 13, another Scott Schneider item regarding the 2019 pavement rehabilitation project phase 1B. Scott, you're up.
Thank you. This item is regarding the paving of Meadowcroft, which was delayed. It was part of last year's paving job that Rachel did in the Morningside neighborhood, but it got delayed because of a Ross Valley sanitation district project that was working past when they thought they would be working. And so we needed to take that part of this section of road out of that project. And then we're looking to do it for this summer.
All right.
And then
Any questions of staff?
Can I add one thing in?
I think you better.
Yeah, about a third of the project is being paid for by utilities. Ross Valley Sanitary District is the biggest chunk, and then PG&E and MMWD. So it's in the staff report, but I just want to make that point. So it's always nice when we have those contributions.
It is, and congratulations on continuing to get them. Because they don't grow on little feet and come and present themselves by themselves.
Yeah, and just to, I'll be, working with Ross Valley Sanitary District in particular, but all the utilities have been very cooperative. So we do get a lot of help from Ross Valley Sanitary District. The water district is really steps up when we need help. So.
Yeah. So good job. Any other questions with respect to this? Any public comment? All right, bring it back for any discussion and a motion. Why don't we start with you, Brian?
No discussion. I'm prepared to move. No comments from me. I'm prepared. I will move the approval of the 2019 pavement rehabilitation project phase 1B. Did I get all that right?
With attendant authorizations?
With attendant authorizations for construction bids and the town manager to award the contract to the lowest bidder who is both responsive and responsible.
Good action. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We'll start with you, John.
Aye.
And Alexis.
Aye.
And Steve.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
And Ford is yes. Good job, and it'll be good to get this completed. I'm sure the neighbors will be appreciative of that. And you are our follow-through star tonight, Scott. You're next up with item 14, addressing parking meter collection and maintenance contract. Go ahead.
Thank you. This item has two components to it, both about parking in our downtown parking lots. And when we first got the shelter in place, town manager Donnery decided that it would be a good idea to not charge people to park in our downtown parking lots. We didn't want to further impede people coming down, or the few people that were coming down to go to restaurant, pick up their food from restaurants and things like that. And I've also noticed just walking around that typically there's only 2 or 3 or 4 cars in any of the downtown parking lots at one time. So if we were charging fees, we wouldn't be making very much money off of that. And then the second element of this is that since the parking meters were installed many years ago, the town has been contracting with the City of San Rafael Parking Services to do weekly meter collection. And so they go by and pull all the change out of the meters, and then they do maintenance on them. And when I was working for the City of San Rafael and I built the corporation yard, I had a little office for one of the town employees, and his only job was to repair the meters. And several years later, he retired, and they did not fill that position. And since then, the city of San Rafael has installed electronic parking meters that take credit cards, and we have much less maintenance issues that our old mechanical style have. So the city of San Rafael has been having trouble keeping our parking meters in good condition. And so I think this is a good time to, get rid of that contract with them and kind of phase out our old mechanical parking meters. And then if and when traffic starts picking back up in downtown, we can look at maybe alternative methods. Say, for example, a pay station at the Pine Street lot, or 1 or 2 pay stations in the Creek Park lot that can fulfill the function of collecting the parking fees and not have that $1,500 a month contract with San Rafael.
So the scope of this item, Scott, is to get rid of those older parking meters, but not what we have in the Magnolia lot, right?
Well, for Pine Street, it could be serviced by 1 pay station, similar to the Magnolia lot pay station. We're not asking to install that right now. We wanted to wait and see how the traffic volumes or the parking volumes are going to be over the next several months.
Right, it's just to get rid of the old meters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, any
Well,
public?
hold on. I'm sorry.
John,
So,
go ahead.
So Scott, so if we cancel the contract with San Rafael, but the meters are still there, right? I mean, they may ultimately go away, but there would be a period of time where the old meters would still be there, right?
Yes.
Who would service them in that period of time? Town staff?
Well, right now we're waiving the parking fee, so people should not be putting any coins in them.
Yeah.
We would continue.
So you're thinking that suspension of collection would occur until there's a more permanent solution, such as replacing them with pay stations?
Yes.
Okay. And the pay stations are kind of expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, the one we have in Magnolia lot is about $15,000.
Yeah, of course, that would continue because we'd still get those fees. But I mean, wouldn't we suffer a revenue loss for whatever period of time we're not collecting? I mean, I know people aren't parking there right now, but I'm just worried that if things open up, it might be some time before we had a permanent solution, or in the meantime, there'd be a revenue loss. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but that would be the case, right?
Yeah, John, we pay a lot of money to San Rafael.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
And so the thinking, and we can move this along sooner rather than later, but we kind of want to feel out COVID-19 and what's happening downtown. But
yeah.
we do have a lot of money set aside that we could do pay stations. And one of the thought, and Scott's done a very thorough study. He wants to maybe double check the parking when things go back to normal, whatever that means. But the idea would be that we would reconfigure how we're doing parking and maybe have pay stations only on the avenue, and then maybe pay stations in Creek Park. But because Creek Park is, reimagine Creek Park and other issues, maybe that would be free or cheaper. And so we do have enough money to do a number of pay stations on the main stretch of San Anselmo Avenue. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, with all that. But
Sean, has there been any sort of an assessment of what the cost will be of getting rid of the old obsolete parking meters?
No, currently there's a number of bagged ones, and we could just figure out how we could bag them all. There hasn't been an assessment to get rid of them, no.
Because, I mean, it's just that, I don't know, if they're just left out there and they get more decrepit, they're gonna look run down, and, a bagged parking meter along with an empty storefront is not an appetizing presentation.
Yeah, well, we don't have any really, I guess the only ones that are in front of a storefront are in the Creek Park lot, right? There's some there, but
right.
And then there's the Pine Street parking lot.
Right.
I think we could actually remove them gradually with our own crew, or get a contract to do it very quickly if need be. So
okay,
this is just a transition, and we could continue, like, as soon as this is things go back to normal or whatever that means, we could go back to, collecting fees and seeing it. This is just an idea to try to move along in the direction of getting them replaced eventually.
Yeah. No, I get that. We probably will never go back to what one once knew as normal. But hopefully we'll go to a better place. Any other questions to staff? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, bring it back. May I have a motion? Don't all jump up at once.
I'll move to support the staff on not renewing the San Rafael contract.
Great.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We'll start with Alexis.
Aye.
Go to Steve.
Aye.
Go to John.
Aye.
And Brian.
Yes.
And Ford is yes. And we will move now to our last agenda item, which is item number 15, Memorandum of Understanding for the Marin County Pollution Control Infrastructure Project. And Scott, you are our final batter on this.
All right, thank you. So the town works very closely with the Marin County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, and they assist us with meeting the requirements of the stormwater permit that we have with the State Water Board. And over the years, the requirements of that stormwater permit are always increasing, and the McStop staff have been very helpful in helping San Anselmo and all the other agencies in meeting those requirements. And one of the major requirements it's just starting now, and we have, I think, another 9 years to fully comply, and that's the new trash regulations. And they are going to eventually be in effect for all parts of town where we have either commercial areas or multifamily housing, and then also along transit routes and transit stops, that where we have to keep all trash bigger than the size of a cigarette butt out of the storm drains that flow to the creek. And so this memorandum of understanding tonight is with the McStop program regarding a grant that they received. And the grant provides funding to install both large trash capture devices in some cities where they can grab a whole bunch of drainage area and treat the trash load that's coming through that storm drain system, as well as small trash capture devices. And that's what we'd be looking at, trying to get some installed in some catch basins, maybe in the downtown area, and see how they work and see how much maintenance it takes and how many leaves it takes to plug them and that kind of stuff. And the grant would provide for the installation of these, and the grant has a 50% match, and the McStop staff expects that most of that match will be done with staff time. So a majority of the 50% would come from the McStop staff themselves, and then there would be a portion of that local match that would be San Anselmo staff. So we would keep track of our hours and give that to McStop, and they can put that on their grant invoice forms. And so we're expecting that there's going to be no net cost to the town to install several small trash capture devices.
Do you have an estimate of how much staff time the town's going to contribute?
We don't think it's going to be that much. We already are doing a lot of tasks for the overall stormwater program and the overall mapping of our town in relation to the new trash regulations. But for this grant specifically, it would be just figuring out what would be a good location for 1 or 2 devices, and then assisting with encroachment permits, and the county or the McStop program would be finding the contractor and getting the devices installed. So it should be a fairly manageable staff load.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? All right, seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back and request a motion if nobody wants to make any comments.
I'll move approval of the memorandum of understanding between the county, other participating agencies, and the town of San Anselmo.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. John, what's your vote?
Aye.
And Brian?
Aye.
And Steve?
Aye.
And Alexis?
Aye.
And I'm yes. And excellent. So that's adopted. That brings us to the end of our meeting. We got a lot of work done very efficiently. Thank you all very much, and continue to be clean and stay safe. Thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ford.
We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Bye.